from the moment that a homeowner signs a contract to the moment that they can turn on their system, commission their system, and then they are connected to the grid. Wouldn't even surprise me for most solar companies for that process to take 6 months.
Right.
But here we went from contract to commissioning both systems within 6 months with only 5 guys, only 5 installers.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I am here with Keena Mullins. Keena Mullins is a solar entrepreneur with Revolt in West Virginia, a solar startup. Really exciting to have her on. I met with her previously, and you're going to see clips from a previous moment we had on the roof of their solar installation. They have a 500 kilowatt solar installation at their facility in West Virginia, outside of Charleston, West Virginia. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about the challenge of starting up a solar business. We're going to talk about the particular challenge of doing that in West Virginia as a woman entrepreneur, as a single mom. We're also going to talk about the solar supply chain. This is what I started with when I initially wanted to interview Keena, was to talk about solar supply chain, solar demand, Tesla Solar, how TeslaBot could be involved in installing solar, solar on Mars and Bot were the ideas that I had at first. And then in the course of meeting her and talking with her, I realized there's something special about starting up a solar business and starting from where she started to where she is today. So we're going to get into all of that.
Okay, that is John Amos.
That factory in the background is John Amos, a coal factory.
Yes, it's the largest coal-fired power plant.
A coal-fired power plant, sorry.
In the state.
Right.
And then here you're looking at.
This is a 300 kilowatt solar system.
On this building.
On this building, and then over there is a 200 kilowatt system.
Yeah, so it's 500 kilowatts of solar total. It's the largest privately funded solar system in the state.
Before I start asking you questions, Keena, about all these topics, could you just tell my audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into this?
My educational background is actually not in anything close to solar. It's in biology, and I'm from the coal fields of Virginia, from the county that was the site of the world's largest underground coal mine in 1970. So I came back to the region about 10 years ago, started working on issues in economic transition, mostly because I was seeing lots of job loss in my communities and in my community. And it wasn't the first time that it had happened. So what was happening at that time is that lots of coal miners were losing their jobs. Lots of operations were closing their doors, and people were moving into oil and gas jobs, and even those people were seeing layoffs. So we had seen this happen before in the 90s with the advent of surface mining technology, which is mountaintop removal coal mining, whereas we used to have men go underground, men and women go underground and mine the coal from the mountains. It changed to we would use the coal operators would use dynamite and just blow the mountaintop off and then just like sort of bulldoze the coal, and that takes far fewer people.
We won this contract in late 2020. Revolt was founded in 2019, and we managed to execute this installation with 2 points of interconnection. And
just to be clear, the reason why we're here is I found out you were a solar entrepreneur in West Virginia.
Yes.
And I wanted to see more about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Are there any other solar entrepreneurs of significance in the state of West Virginia that you know of?
Yeah, so before I founded Revolt, I worked at a different solar company. I left so that I could start, my goal was to create an Appalachian-based contractor that's capable of executing multiple megawatt solar installations. The other company is more residentially focused. Through the merger with Nitro Construction, we really are able to prove that, we're an Appalachian-based contractor that is capable of utility skills.
And there's something special about doing solar in West Virginia, a coal state, right? For those who are into renewable energy,
Uh.
coal is kind of the enemy. Coal is like
Right.
the big polluter, and solar is the big savior of not just climate change, but also air pollution. And there's a perception that coal pollutes the air. Maybe modern coal is a little bit better than that, but
Right.
there's
And
that perception.
so this is more, I think this company is set out to sort of change the narrative around coal versus solar, make solar not such a scary word.
Make solar great again?
Yeah, make Appalachians love solar.
Okay.
And we do it every day
Yeah.
by saving people money on their electric bills.
Yeah.
We've been able to change the perception a lot and like change the conversation as well.
Right.
And if the goal is, to increase the rate that we adopt renewables, then I think that it's important that public perception changes with it. And there's no place that would be more reluctant to install renewables on the grid than West Virginia. I mean, when I started working here,
Right.
and today, so I've been doing solar for 7 years now.
Yeah.
We're still basically last with the amount of renewables on the grid.
West Virginia is last?
Yes.
In my senior year of college, I did a lot of work in Arctic ecology, read a lot of scientific papers about warming in the Arctic, and knew that we needed to be aggressively adopting renewables on the grid. It was just blatantly apparent that solar development particularly interested me, because it seemed like it had the greatest potential for solar as an energy source had the most potential for rapidly advancing technology through efficiency. The same square footage, like tiny cell, you can make that much more efficient faster than any other renewable source, it seemed to me. So solar was what I was interested in.
I worked for a long time on incentivizing renewable energy projects in Appalachia because there's no better use for our abandoned mine lands.
Yeah.
Like, I tried to think of uses, and solar will be installed on our abandoned mine lands.
Yeah.
It's just that when that day comes, I wanted there to be an Appalachian-based contractor who we can point to and say, this contractor has proven that they can install farms, and we have.
Right.
For Toyota, two of them. So the economics on this system.
Is it like a 5-year payback, a 7-year payback? When will it?
It would have been an 8-year payback without the additional incentives that they weren't even aware were involved. The rate at which we executed this project is lightning fast.
So it costs like some amount of money to install this, and 8 years without incentives. So there's now some new incentives or discovered incentives. So maybe it'll be a payback in 6 years or 5
Yes.
years. And then these panels will probably continue generating electricity for 25 years or longer.
They're guaranteed for 25 years.
Right.
So the reason that we have manufacturer warranties on panels for that long is because there are the places where solar has been in operation longest.
Yeah.
Like in Europe, panels are still generating 50 years later.
Right.
So yes.
So this it seems like this might generate more electricity than Nitro can use. Is this electricity being fed back into the grid?
Yeah, so we have 4 meters on this campus, and I don't know if I already mentioned it, but Nitro Construction actually totally acquired Revolt before we even finished the installation.
Right.
So now we're a subsidiary of Nitro Construction,
Yeah.
which is good because Nitro Construction has been in business for 50 years now, And whereas before, this was a tiny company, Revolt was a tiny company, like that started out of like a storage unit in a Starbucks. So not a lot of people would have trusted us with a $50 million contract. Whereas now we can. We have evidence of executing $200 million contracts.
Right.
So
I could see that solar development, renewable energy on our grid was coming at us like lightning fast, like 1,000 miles an hour. And I could look around me and know that there's no one doing solar. I actually like Googled it to see if even anyone nearby was doing residential solar. No one was. So I heard about a solar startup in West Virginia. And yeah, it was a tiny startup. I knew that if I moved to West Virginia and tried hard enough, that I could get a job there. And I did. I was one of the first handful of employees there, and oversaw the operations portion of the company during my tenure. We grew tenfold, so 44 employees when I started and 42 when I left. We also scaled from just servicing West Virginia into Kentucky and into Ohio. I gained a lot of experience in agile project management. The rules when installing solar can change quickly. They can change within the same county by, one city's code could be different than the county's code. So you have to know all the components in scaling. So you have to know all the regulations for all the different states, as well as all the different utilities. Probably oversaw 400 projects while I was there. I had like 125 in my queue when I left. And we learned, the hard way. Pretty much every problem that can go wrong in a residential solar installation, my team, and I should mention, Revolt's team is mostly composed of the original employees that worked at the other company, the installers. We've seen almost every potential problem that can happen in a residential solar installation happen, and then navigated through it successfully together. I remember telling them, I know that it feels like we don't know what we're doing, but that's how it should feel. This is how it feels to pioneer an industry like solar in Appalachia. There's no rule book. We're the first to do it. No one else knows how. We're learning how. Yeah, so they're still with me like 7 years later, and that means a lot. We have a great team. Both points of interconnection for the 500 kilowatt system are grid tied. So there are times when the solar is producing more energy than the buildings are using, so it's sent to the grid. But like I said, we have 4 meters on this campus, and virtual meter aggregation is legal in West Virginia.
Okay.
So the power generated by this solar facility can be used to offset our consumption at our office, even though there's no solar on the office.
You worked for one solar startup, and then at some point you created Revolt.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I worked really hard for that solar startup. There was only 4 of us, so I had to learn how to, and it was also vertical by the time I left. So I had to learn way too much about like building out software, causing automations, and then in 2019, founded Revolt, and it was sort of a side project. I actually had the idea to start Revolt as a development company, just as a side hustle to get enough money to go back to graduate school. I think I told you that. But it sort of spiraled out of control.
Because your real passion is genetics, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But somehow you ended up in solar, and somewhere down the road you're hoping to get back into genetics.
Yeah.
So
I think I'll probably always do many things, but I think I can do both.
Okay, so you start Revolt in 2019. How has that gone? I think you told me before your first year you did $1 million or something like that.
Yeah, so our first year we did 1.2 million in revenue, and we were only acting as an EPC. So in the solar industry, if you want money, do not start a solar installation company. Do not sell residential solar if you want money. Like, I have this joke. It's like, residential solar cells is the way that guys figured out how to get Lambos. We were an EPC before the acquisition.
What's an EPC or EQC? What is that?
Engineering, procurement, and construction. So we were not selling our own contracts. I had a whole other full-time job. I was just sort of overseeing the operations. And I had a business partner at the time, and he's the one who got the $1 million contract on this campus. It took us 3 months to execute it. So our tiny team, our tiny little, scrappy solar company, our guys were on that roof, on these 4 roofs for 3 months. So of course we lost that arrangement, and we didn't have contracts coming in again. So this is technically this is my 3rd solar startup.
Sorry, you got the project done. I mean, I was there and I saw you had 500 kilowatts of solar panels up, but something didn't get done.
So the first startup was the company that I worked with as an employee, but you could say I was definitely integral to building that company to what it is today. And then the second startup was Revolt One that acted as EPC.
Oh,
and
so Revolt One.
Startup,
So Revolt One selling solar and installing is the 3rd startup. Revolt Two.
yeah.
Revolt in the business of not only installing solar but actually selling it to customers is the new startup.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So following the acquisition, everything had to be dismantled, and had to dismantle everything and build it.
Revolt went through a transition. You got acquired. There was a whole bunch of things that went on, and now your Revolt is sort of reborn with you at the head, and you're pursuing both selling and installing solar. And I think you do a lot of commercial.
Yes.
Do you do more commercial than residential?
We pursue a lot of commercial, and we do small commercial. It's really difficult to get large commercial entities to invest in solar, especially in West Virginia, with a lack of incentives. But that's where we're headed. I would like to have Revolt Energy be. I've positioned Revolt Energy to be a utility. Like, I'm also an aggregator broker, which means basically I can and we began self-financing solar projects, like the one that I told you about for the lady with the bed and breakfast who does a lot for her community.
Well, why don't we talk about that? Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
So you described this project to me. There's this bed and breakfast business, and I think you said their energy bill was $1,700 a month, and the
Yes.
cost, and you quoted them a price of $120,000 for a solar installation, and then, I mean, I can do the numbers, or you can do the numbers. It's probably better if you do the numbers. Can you lay that out? Could describe that project for the audience?
Yeah, sure. So this is a lady who does like a lot for her community. I grew up in the Southwest Virginia coal fields, and I had never been to this part of Southern West Virginia. I could not believe how bad the infrastructure is there. And I met this lady, and she's telling me she runs a food pantry. She has a bed and breakfast, but she allows people in her community who need a place to stay to just stay there. And she has these $1,700 per month electric bills. And I could literally, Warren, throw a rock from her porch to the entry of an underground coal mine, operational coal mine. When I was down there, she had some people come and bring their power bills. I cannot believe that the people who live in that community have to pay so much for power. It's just, they have coal in their backyards, and they're dealing with all of the environmental impacts and economic impacts. They should have to pay least for power, if anyone probably in the country. We couldn't get her financed through residentially because she's commercial, because I don't think she qualified for enough. We decided to just, I was just like, well, let's just install it. Why don't you just pay us? Like, and I, of course, like checked with the president of ESA, and I was like, I just want to finance this ourselves for this woman. We'll own, operate, and maintain the system for 25 years. She'll pay us monthly payments of $400 per month. She's posted 2 of her power bills. The consumption charge on the second one, which was the first month that it was in full operation, was like less than $2.
Less than
So
less than $2?
less than $2. Yeah.
Okay.
So with taxes, fees, and everything involved with the meter, like the basic bill is like $12. Her solar payment is $400 a month. So we will save her $1,300 per month.
For 25 years.
I mean, there's system degradation.
Well, but also the electric bill might get higher. The grid electric bill might have gotten higher.
Yeah, I mean, the rate at which the panels degrade is like 1/6 of the rate at which the utilities increase.
Right.
Even more.
So you were describing this to me, and I think the way you described it was like a $120,000 price, which is going to be paid to you $400 a month over 25 years. But there was also, you were describing some sort of tax credits that you were able to secure. Can you describe that, how the tax credits work and how that ends up making it easier for you to finance this project?
You can copy this model. So we've just moved into this portion of our business. Power purchase agreements just became legal in West Virginia last year. And since we're a commercial entity, and I just started like a side company to do the finance portion, because ESA does not want to self-finance and own projects for this long. So I started a company that will finance projects that Revolt installs. The way it works is that and it gets really lucrative if you can combine in a USDA REAP grant, Rural Energy for America program grant for businesses, because it can be 25% of the cost of the system comes back to the company that financed it in the form of a grant. So the contract cost is $120,000. The investment tax credit on this system will be 30%. 85% of the contract cost is the basis. The IRS allows you to accelerate the depreciation on solar equipment to year 1, as long as you still own the asset for 5 years. So through a combination of, on this project, it's going to be a 30% ITC, 30% on the contract, so 30% of $125,000.
And sorry, ITC is investment tax credit?
Correct. For businesses. For homeowners, it's income tax credit.
Okay.
And then you combine that with macros, we will get more than 55% of the contract cost back in year 1. If we could have combined it with the USDA REAP grant, then that would have been 80 plus $120,000 of payments, plus renewable energy credits. So it's very lucrative.
But in the end, you were able to build the project, get the tax credits, get the project built for the customer. You ultimately not immediately initially you're out because you financed the project. But after year 1 or somewhere in year 1 or year 2, you've made your money back to the point where you're even or close to even, and you're collecting $400 a month for the next 25 years from the business owner who's thrilled to have lowered her utility bill by about $1,300 a month. So it's a major win. It's a win for her.
Like 3 companies profited in this scenario.
It's like a win for her.
Revolt did the installation, profited, sold the agreement to the other company that I started, and we paid Revolt for that contract.
Right.
And then, so all three entities win.
All three entities make money, and the society benefits because we're shifting to renewable energy. We're shifting to
Yeah,
cleaner energy that's better for society.
absolutely. And then there's a social impact too, that we executed that project for her in that traditional coal community. And it changes the narrative, I think it changes the perception of solar, especially when, this is coal loving country. Like coal's a part of my heritage as well. But when you can show like actual people that they can save money with solar, they become much more amenable to wanting to see more of it on the grid.
All right. So I wanted to ask you, in the course of our conversations, you described, you came at this from out of what I would say nowhere. You're a young woman from Appalachia, not really an expert in solar at all. You studied genetics. I think you said at one point you're working at Applebee's, and all of a sudden you're a solar entrepreneur on your third or fourth really startup, if you count the financing company. How can you describe the path from Applebee's to where you are today? From a personal side, there's the starting off as an Applebee's waitress, which and then there's also, like, I think you described yourself as a single mom. Can you describe that path, the challenges of doing all this as a single mom, starting off as a waitress?
Even my waitress job wasn't even going that well. If you can imagine, I could only work while, my kids were in school. So how much business is Applebee's seeing, 10 to 4 in Southwest Virginia. I did have a lot of success serving in Cleveland while I was there, but it was just a necessity, really, Warren. Like, I wanted to solve a lot. I needed a job that I could do from home because I didn't have reliable childcare, like whatsoever. But I knew if I learned enough about solar, I could make myself indispensable and get a job that way. And then I just became obsessed with learning everything that I could about solar, and then decided to start Revolt to help ensure that the maximum economic benefit from inevitable solar development on our abandoned mine lands would go to the communities in which they were being installed. So someone had to learn how to do it.
What I'm getting at, there's this personal challenge where, you told me you're a licensed, you got a whole bunch of licenses along the way, a licensed general contractor, something with electrical, something with renewables. Can you describe what you had to do to get all those things?
Work like a maniac. Like,
there were times. I think what you told me is you had to study and take tests, right?
Yeah, I had to study and take tests. But just overall through the course of, like, from Applebee's to here, like, and especially beginning when I started in the industry, like at the first startup, there were times I was working from like every waking hour all the way up until 3 a.m., take a 4-hour nap, get up at 7, take the kids to school, then work while the baby sleeps, like the newborn. Yeah, no, I do not recommend. It was very hard. It was very hard.
But it seems like this was like when you describe this to me, getting those licenses seems like a big accomplishment. We talked about this before we started recording, that, my impression is getting licenses as a general contractor, getting these licenses is a challenge. It's not that easy. You're like, it's just taking a test, but it seems to me like those are hard tests. What am I missing there?
Well, they're hard tests. I'm a good test taker. It had to be done. The license I'm most proud of is the Alternative Energy System Specialist in Virginia. You have to have evidence that you've installed solar for 5 years, even to apply to sit for the exam. And there was a lot of electrical theory. It was one of the hardest tests. I made a joke. I posted like a photo of all the books that I had to use to practice before I sat for the exam, and I said, this must be what it feels like to pass the bar. But yeah, so that's the one I'm most proud of. Easiest license to obtain was electrical contractors in Kentucky. General contractor's license. It wasn't an easy exam. A lot of people told me that they didn't think I could do it. And I know way too much about concrete now than I ever wanted to. It's doable.
Obviously, it's doable. You did it, but I would say that you took a lot on your shoulders and you managed to accomplish that when a lot of other people probably wouldn't have.
Thank you. I felt like I had to.
We've covered the startups. We've covered your personal journey from Applebee's to solar entrepreneur. I wanted to turn to talk about some general issues that I see, you know, as a fan of solar, as somebody who wants to see this grow. You seem very passionate about solar.
Mhm.
Can you explain to my audience why you're so passionate about solar?
Well, obviously we need to, so I'm also a big fan of Tesla. Their mission is to increase the rate at which we adopt renewables on the grid. And I had to be here. So what could I do, you know, to support that mission from here? So yeah, I set out to increase the rate at which Appalachia adopts renewables on the grid.
When we've talked about this before, I feel like I hear a few different things that motivate you about solar. One is this accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, but I also hear your concern for the people of the community and helping them save money and creating jobs. So
Mhm.
can you talk about the money side of it for the consumer, and maybe we can talk about, I think you talked about the job side at the beginning of the interview, I think, but can you talk about what you see for there's I'll call it the little people, like the regular people living in Appalachia. Appalachia is thought of as a place that struggles economically and has struggled economically for a long time. And you grew up in it and you've seen it, and I think you identify with the people in your community and you want to help them, and you see solar helping them. So how does solar help regular people in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio, in Appalachia?
Yeah, you're right. This issue is really close to my heart. So we need to move away from fossil fuels. Everyone knows that now. Like even people here will agree to that now. In the beginning, you know, I just got called like a tree hugging hippie a lot, but I was on their side. They're starting to realize that. I wanted people from this community to gain the maximum economic benefit possible from inevitable shift in the way we power our future. Like I said, we had been through it before with the advent of surface mining, and nothing was done. There's a very easy way that we can prepare. Like you can strategically prepare a region for solar development. We could, and West Virginia did actually write the rules in its own favor in 2009. In 2015, West Virginia abolished its own renewable portfolio standard, which you can think of as being like it's a state set of rules for how solar development will happen. You know, you can add multipliers for contracts that are installed by in-state contractors, in-state developers, union labor, on abandoned mine lands. Like you can make this solar more valuable just through state legislation. And it is madness that our leaders are not writing those rules right now before something is done at the federal level. Because I think I told you, so we use in our set of rules that we abolished in 2015, I think the goal was something like 25% by 2025. 25% of the grid was going to be, yeah, so that's a minimum 25% on the grid renewable by 2025. Then abolished it in 2015, and not only abolished it, made a cap. So West Virginia is the only state to ever abolish its own RPS. And then instead of having a minimum on the grid and goal for when that date should happen, they put a maximum. So the maximum is 3%. And when I started in solar, we had like 0.5%, less than 0.5%. We're 90% of the way to our 3% cap. This is just totally backwards. Yeah, you're right. I just because we need to move away from fossil fuels, I don't believe that traditional energy communities deserve to pay. If we can learn how to install the solar ourselves, and we have proven it. If we can do it ourselves, we can build it. These contracts are inevitably coming. And part of my goal was making sure, or helping to make sure, that when they do, that the people who live here get the jobs that they create.
I want to shift a little bit if you're comfortable talking about this. I want to hear the challenges that Revolt faces in securing the supply chain, getting the panels you need, getting the electrical components you need, whatever else you need in order to be able to install solar at the scale you're doing. Has that been a challenge for Revolt? Is that not really a difficult problem? What can you say about that?
The way that this is challenging for Revolt is that this year alone, the price of modules and inverters alone, I'm not even factoring in all the other components, have increased. The cost of our materials has gone up 50%. We're a vertical solar company. We're not as vertical as Tesla. They manufacture their own panels. We do not. We have a strong supply for what we need right now, but we're paying more than I've ever seen by 50% for modules.
And inverters as well. And then are labor costs rising as we see inflation? Is it becoming a challenge to pay your workers enough to do the work?
They all need raises for sure that I can't give them. The traditional way that we finance homeowners solar installation is, the tax credit increase. Within a week, we started having to pay those partners more by 4% more of the contract. And then the Fed rate increase, doubled. So all of it, we can no longer offer low interest loans. So we have a solution. My goal is to make it through the end of the year residentially, to be able to sell enough solar. And we can often do that with cash. We have enough cash customers to do that. Starting in January, I think we're just going to start self-financing even residential systems like the one I described for you, for the lady with the bed and breakfast, do a similar situation through the third startup, the finance company, where we'll own, operate, and maintain those assets for people so that we can make payments lower.
So then let's talk about, we've covered the supply side. Your supply chain costs went up. Can we talk about the demand side? How difficult it is to find customers who want solar installed, both on the residential side and the commercial side?
I can only speak to, our experience here. You will not see a Revolt Energy ad anywhere. We do not advertise. It's all sort of word of mouth. And for the size that our company is, we can't even keep up with the demand. We're getting so many requests for proposals that it's difficult to keep up with the demand. We don't have anyone on staff really, other than me, who can sell the commercial. It's difficult. We need more people. Revolt needs more people.
So is the demand stronger on the commercial side or the residential side?
It's equal. I would say it's equal. The
So
demand for proposals and is equal. No one wants to install commercial solar here until 2023. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense. I wouldn't advise it. So the goal is that we would be a turnkey solar, vertical solar company that who's rooted in Appalachia, the central Appalachian region, who can effectively execute any project from residential to utility scale. So with residential, you don't want more of a backlog than 3 months. If you had more than a 3-month backlog, I would think that would be bad. We have worked really hard to be super efficient in execution. Like the fastest residential contract that we have ever, from the day the customer sold, bought the system, like signed with me, to the day that that we were able to turn it on and it was grid tied, was 7 days. So from the contract to commissioning, 7 days. Like, I'm really proud of that. So you don't want more than 3-month backlog with residential. In small commercial or commercial and industrial scale, it's good to have like a year and a half backlog, but no more.
All right, let's turn to Tesla. I am a Tesla fan. I'm an unapologetic Tesla fan. I actually had an order for Tesla Solar Roof and they were unable to deliver it timely, and we ended up needing a roof and we ended up just getting a regular roof. What are your thoughts? That's solar roof rather than solar panels, but what are your thoughts on Tesla's solar business? What do you see them doing right? What do you see them doing wrong? What do you see as their potential for the future?
You know, I really don't know. I don't know what the lead time is on like a Tesla solar installation, but I do know what would cause a long lead time. And that would be struggles in operations. Like I said, when you're scaling across states, even within counties, and utilities, all the rules change. And Tesla has the most sophisticated and best software engineers in the world. But I can tell you that solar operations and execution, the efficiency that any company would be able to execute residential solar projects is directly proportional to the ability of the project management software's ability to eliminate human error in the feasibility and life cycle of the project. You have to know the why behind the logic. Like, you have to know why, like, if this happens, then do this, but you have to know why. And then you have to know it for maybe 30 different utilities in a single state. And maybe it's that they have too much demand. I would love to know more about Tesla's solar operations.
It sounds like one of the big problems with the industry in general, as on a nationwide basis, is there's too much complexity in terms of regulation at the local level. Instead of having one like federal regulatory standard, here's how you're going to install solar, every solar installer has to like negotiate the local regulations at the state, county, and local level. And that probably makes it harder to deploy solar at scale.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been...
Is there a positive side to having all this local regulation? Does it make society better to have such extensive local regulation of something that seems like should be relatively uniform nationwide? We all use 110 or 120 volt or whatever, and 240 for our dryers and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like our electrical systems are that much different from West Virginia to Florida.
What varies by state is net metering laws and regulations. And what varies by town to county is building code. And then the process that you go about getting an inspection. So I'm getting into the tiny little details here. So for most of the state, there's an inspection company that we will use, and I know like the back of my hand where they are, like on what day of the week. And then we have two major monopoly utilities, so I know their processes. They're different. Like the first thing, if you're going to interconnect with one of them, the first thing you do is mail a check, because I know that if they don't get their check, like they're not even looking at the application until they get the check. But with the other, they generate an invoice after basically the whole project's done. I think that it's way better to leave these things to the states.
You've described the job of installing solar as a critical job to bring to West Virginia, bring to the Appalachians to replace the coal jobs that are lost. But those of us who are Tesla fans are looking at TeslaBot. And I'm particularly advocated, and I've been shot down a couple times when I suggested this, but not by you, but by James Dalma in particular. I don't know if you know who he is. It seems to me that TeslaBot would be a really good way of doing or helping improve the efficiency of solar installations. If you could identify parts of the job that are, in Elon's words, dangerous, repetitive, and boring. And if you could, let's say you would normally have 10 people on a crew doing an installation. If you could have 10 bots up there and reduce the human crew to 5, number one, you're saving on labor costs, but you're also saving the risk that somebody might fall off a roof, right? There's 5 fewer people who might fall off a roof, and maybe you have the bots do the more dangerous jobs. Do you see any potential for something like TeslaBot coming in and installing solar, and how do you see that working?
So I think in solar farming, this is where it makes sense. But I don't think a humanoid robot is the best solution there. Like even now, we sort of have like a robot truck that for solar farming that there's just a mechanical contraption on the back, and you just have one guy like on the truck dropping I-beams and pile driving them, and then just go. So I don't think humanoid form is best. I think it would be very, very easy, and it's possible that Tesla's already done it, and this is the way they install solar farms. So beyond the pile driving, you have the installation of the racking, and then mounting panels. Okay, and then you have an I-beam, and then you
just to be clear, we're talking about ground-based solar right now. Solar farms, you're talking about ground-based solar. So you put an I-beam in the ground, and then you put
a frame.
You put a frame up to put the panels on.
Yeah. Like
the frame is mounted.
There's a frame that slides over, and then you pop it up, and then you put racks on there, and then there's a lot of like drilling involved. Right. Not drilling, but compact. I used to actually do some of this stuff, like in the early days, but I've forgotten a lot of it. And then the mounting of panels, which are very heavy. And then making connections between panels. And then, a lot of things on the DC side of a solar farm installation, I think could be done by a bot, but not in humanoid form. I think you would just want to it wouldn't even be that hard to, make that truck, the one that already does the pile driving, better.
Well, the role I see for humanoid bot is wherever you see a human, like I was particularly thinking about solar installs on roof, and you've got a human up there, 30 feet above the ground, placing their life at risk because they might fall off that roof. And if you could get bot to the point where it could do that task, or at least some of that task, and reduce the amount of time that humans are exposed to that risk of being up on a roof, then you're making humans safer, and you may be making solar installs more efficient. That's the vision I have for it. Now, guys, again, James Dalma thought I was wrong. It sounds like you think I'm wrong too. Why am I wrong?
Well, because you're talking about people whose ancestors have been climbing underground to mine coal for generations. So they're happy to be on the roof. And our guys love it. Like they love it, at least at first. And then it's creating these jobs, that I set out to create. So I don't
Well,
want to
let me just pause for a second. I'm not suggesting that we eliminate human jobs. What I'm suggesting is if bot makes solar roof installation more efficient, solar installations on roofs more efficient and safer, then you might be able to install more solar. You might be able to accelerate the deployment. In other words, if you had 10 guys on a job and you went to 5 guys on the job supervising the bots, then the other five guys could supervise another team of bots installing, and you could do twice as much work in the same time. And maybe maybe the guys actually make more money because the technology increases, investment in capital increases productivity of labor. So you're actually making the guys doing the job are generating more value by supervising bots doing the work than doing the bots the work themselves. There's this tendency that people have to see when a bot comes in to do a job, you're destroying a human job, as opposed to saying you're enabling a human to do even more work. And then more humans end up doing more solar faster, and we spread solar faster. And it's an endless thing because 25 years later, you need to replace those solar panels, and you just end up with a cycle of work. I think there's this tendency to think if we put bot on a job, we've destroyed a human job instead of enabling humans to do more.
Yeah, think of capitalism. So the company that hires 5 bots, are they good? Not just hire 10? And then I agree with you about the potential to deploy more solar faster. But like I said, I think that you can accomplish that in ground installations. Because they could potentially you can have you could possibly use bots, humanoid form bots, to make connections between panels where they take 2 cables and put them together. We'll do some other things on a side, but part of the reason, installing solar farms for humans is not fun. It's not fun.
Well, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. I mean, first of all, we're headed towards a world, at least in theory, where the bots eventually, the artificial intelligence is better than us at everything. And then and there's a view there that basically the bots do all the work and we don't do anything. I don't like that vision. I think that that's the wrong vision for the future. I think that there will be always be meaningful work for humans. And the point is that what we've seen over the last 100+ years is in capitalism is as we invest capital in machines that make human labor more productive, the vision, every time we see something like this, there's like, oh, we're going to destroy human jobs. And every time we do it, we end up creating more jobs than we thought. The jobs that we create are jobs that we didn't anticipate. So if you go back 30 years ago when coal jobs started disappearing, right? Because coal jobs have been disappearing for a while. Nobody thought there'd be jobs installing solar in any significant quantity, right? And at a certain point, it became, wait a minute, we can install solar, and brilliant people like you figured that out, right? When automated teller machines came along, cash machines, ATMs came along, people thought it would destroy teller jobs. Teller jobs doubled because the ATMs made banking more efficient and enabled banks to open more branches and enabled the banks to have the tellers do higher value work. And so there was more teller jobs that paid better. So the idea that deploying bot just takes, jobs away from those labors, like there's parts of the job that the humans don't like doing. There's parts of the jobs that are more dangerous. And if you can, I'm not saying this is happening next week, right? It's going to be a long time before bot has developed the training. Humanoid bots have developed the experience and training to be able to get there. But you could see a point where you identify certain tasks on the job that are the most dangerous and the most repetitive. And you can assign those to the bot, and then you can have humans supervising the job and doing the things that bot can't do. And it sounds like you just reject this idea out of hand.
No. I think that you're right about a lot of the things that you just said. I can't do it for this specific company. We're IBEW.
Right. Well, there's the union side of it too, right? There's a union side of it too. But if you, I don't know the union end of it. That's the part I don't know.
it's a really strange and long story. But so for a company, like if it weren't Revolt Energy, you're right. Like it would allow the company to scale faster, move those, like my best designer is currently in the field because I need him there. But if I didn't need like every single one of our installers is amazingly talented, and they could run a residential solar company as well as me. And so we could have, 4 satellite offices really quickly if we had, bots installing the solar residentially. For ground mount installations, I think that the like transformer truck thing combined with bots would be good. But I mean, I see your point.
Okay. So I want to go into a more fun topic. We're going to Mars. I believe humanity's going to Mars. I'm like the monster Elon fan, and I think Elon's going to take us to Mars, and we're ultimately going to have 1 million people living on Mars, and hopefully they're going to be having enough kids to sustain that population. That's a whole nother conversation. But my impression is that Elon's plan for Mars is that we will power the Martian colony with solar. And so I'm guessing it would be primarily ground solar, and that's also where it seems to me that bots would make a lot of sense, because humans don't breathe well on Mars. Like being outside on Mars is going to be challenging for humans, and bots should be fine on the Martian surface. And same thing with the moon, I suppose, that we would be installing solar on the moon. Do you see the potential for solar on Mars? I mean, I think there's less sunlight reaching Mars because it's farther away, but there's also less atmosphere on Mars interfering with the solar hitting the Martian surface. Do you see do you see potential for that? What are your thoughts on solar on Mars, and then maybe bot helping out with installing solar on Mars?
So I think that the transparent glass domes should be solar cells themselves to begin.
Whatever structures they build should have solar on the roofs, whether they're transparent or otherwise.
Right, like in the beginning, everyone's going to be living in glass domes, right?
I'm not sure that's true. My impression is in the beginning, everybody's going to be living in buildings that are going to have Martian soil dumped on top of them to protect them for radiation. There might be
whatever structure people live in the beginning.
Yeah.
Either the roof itself or the top of the roof. Ideally, you will have solar cells that are like windows. We're not that far away from this technology. Just so it would be dual purpose.
Yeah. It just seems like here on Earth, land is valuable and it's scarce, and deploying solar on bare land is like, well, we could have used that land for something else. On Mars, there's basically infinite land. And maybe in 1,000 years we'll have taken up all the land on Mars, and land will be valuable. But I could be wrong. I would think that the cost of installing solar on the ground would be less, and the challenge of installing solar on the ground would be less than the challenge of installing solar on the roof of whatever structures you build on Mars. Our federal government, in all its brilliance, created something called the Inflation Reduction Act. I jokingly refer to it as the Inflation Acceleration Act, but leaving apart my political views, what are your thoughts on the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act on the solar industry and your business in particular?
There are bonus incentives for solar that will definitely benefit my company and companies like mine. I don't even wish that it had happened at a federal level. I wish that it had happened at a state level. Like I was saying with the renewable portfolio standard, we could have incentivized it in the same way at a state level without, a broad sweeping bill with the incentives tilted the way they are in the IRA. And the Treasury Secretary has yet to issue guidance on how to interpret these. But the Biden administration did a study maybe 2021 where there are only 25 listed traditional energy communities in the country. And our Revolt's operational territory covers more than half of that list. So the rest of the country, these traditions, there are only 13. And then there's bonus incentives for installing solar there. There's also bonus incentives for projects over a megawatt in size for contractors who use prevailing wage and basically union labor. This is good for my company. This is bad if you want to use like the robo truck I described to install solar farms in, say, like Nevada, which would be good for the planet. I can tell you that I have not seen any positive results so far. The only thing that happened that impacted solar this year is the ITC went from 26 to 30. But like I said, at the same time, our finance instrument also increased by that exact same amount. Another thing that a state's renewable portfolio standard does is it makes like an actual marketable commodity. Every megawatt hour of solar that is produced from solar that is sited in that state. The utilities in that state have to meet that standard by the given timeline, the minimum, or else they're forced to pay an alternative compliance payment. And then the alternative compliance payment sort of determines the value of the renewable energy credit. And homeowners can have access to these. So it heavily incentivizes solar development in any state. The thing is, okay, this is my fear. Instead of ever there being a requirement for West Virginia utilities to put a minimum amount of solar on the grid, instead there will be some federal requirement where it only applies to like AEP or APCO, which covers like 7 or like 11 states. They will for sure put, their solar in like Texas, not here. West Virginia really needs to reinstate that RPS, or else we will move out. We will lose out on all the potential economic development.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, which I forgot to ask you as sort of a technology question. Tesla likes to connect solar, at least on residential solar, they like to connect it to power walls, to battery storage. And I think on the commercial projects, they like to connect it to Megapack. They have these battery storage devices that can, the sun shines during the day, it doesn't shine at night. If you want to have electricity from solar at night, you need to have batteries to back it up. Does Revolt install batteries as part of any of your projects? Is that something you're looking at? What's your take on battery storage for solar installs?
Yeah, we love we love doing like really complex energy storage systems for customers. Actually, the first project that Revolt ever did, and we didn't have any employees. There was a 450-foot trench power wall. We did install 2 power walls on that job. So we do install batteries often. It's just that for the average West Virginia consumer, the reason they need batteries or can utilize batteries is it's not going to make as much sense always as it would for basically anyone who lives south of here. So it's not uncommon, but we do it all the time. Like the only reason we're not installing power walls is because there's a 6-month lead time for us to procure those. So we use Stores power batteries, but for an average homeowner who wants significant backup, we have to do 40 kilowatt hours of battery backup. So it's not uncommon for people in West Virginia to lose power in the middle of winter for 3 weeks at a time, like, or even in December when there's snow cover. And, you know, that's when you're getting the least amount of solar production. So it's hard to predict how much, in the event of an outage, how much battery charge could come from the solar.
Can a solar, can people like sweep snow off the solar, or is there some technique to like free the solar panels up when they get covered in snow, or is it just like the clouds are bad enough and you're just not getting enough solar energy anyway?
I just don't recommend that people do this. Don't get up on your roof and try to sweep off. Just don't do that. Because
Okay.
I mean, the sunshine will melt it and it will fall off. And unless you like desperately need it to recharge your battery and it's covered in snow, just call us. You know, we'll come sweep the snow off with like our guys who are used to being on roofs. But there's really no need. I mean, there's really no need, because in a couple of days, or even when the sun shines, it's, you know, they're usually tilted, so the snow just sort of like just falls off. This has been great. Maybe we can do it again sometime. I'm
Sure.
sure we will think of questions.
I'm sure we'll find something else to talk about, maybe genetics next time.
Yeah,
The
maybe.
for the audience, if they want to find out more about Revolt, if there's audience in Virginia, what states does Revolt cover? Is it Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
if
basically
anybody,
residentially, yes.
so if anybody in the audience is interested in getting solar and maybe battery backup installed, we'll put a link to Revolt Energy in the description below. Does that make sense?
Okay. Commercially, we can actually service like half of the Eastern US, like, or the Eastern US. Like, we did a project in Huntsville, Alabama. So commercially, we can go farther. Residentially, those states you mentioned, yes.
Okay, so if people are interested, please check out Revolt Energy, link in the description below. Keena, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And before I finish, like I do every video, please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. I wear the Insanely Gigantic t-shirt to impress women because they're so excited by the insanely gigantic potential of solar and robo-taxis. And
Where do you find these shirts?
oh, this is elonbits.com. I sell these shirts.
ElonBits.com.
elonbits.com. This is my website. I sell shirts motivated by things Elon has said.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, but anyway, please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please check out my other videos. Please support me on Patreon, on Locals, or as a YouTube channel member. Links to all that in the description below. Please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And thank you all so much for watching.